The story begins with a red-haired girl asking another girl if she is ready to go back now, but without waiting for an answer, she says that this is where the party started. Then, we see a castle where there are agitated maids, happy that their lady has woken up, and asking to bring the doctor as soon as possible. At that moment the girl opens her eyes, not realizing where she was. She wonders which lady the people around her are talking about, and wonders if she wasn't sleeping just now. The girl suddenly gets up in bed, and seeing the unfamiliar place, she tries to understand where she was, wondering if she is dead. Meanwhile, the maid, very emotional, tells the girl that her body is still weak and that she shouldn't get up so suddenly. The maid calls the girl madam. The girl also realizes that she doesn't feel very well. She has a headache and thinks her head is going to explode from the pain, while she still wonders why she died. She keeps trying to figure out who the woman was in her dream, who was apparently talking to her. The girl lowers her head, and realizes that she cannot control herself because of the memories that have suddenly invaded her mind. The maid, who is still nearby, continues to worry about her mistress and asks her to let her know if she needs anything. Then, suddenly, a young man enters the room. He looks quite serious, and one of the maids tries to tell him not to enter his lady's room unannounced, looking very excited. She says that as the man can see, his wife is still very sick. The man approaches the bed where his wife is lying, saying that he thought she would scream and throw everything at him as soon as she saw him. At that moment, she is very scared by what she sees, and wonders who this man is. The guy scares her because according to her, he was simply huge. The maid informs her master that her mistress is still in trouble, so she thinks it would be better if he left and didn't bother the girl. At that moment, the man looks at his wife and says that it has always been like this. He leans over her a little and gently touches her hair, saying that his wife is once again pretending too much. The girl, who obviously doesn't know what he's talking about, wonders why he called her his wife, wondering if he's her husband. He looked a little sad after those words, and asked his wife to have a little more patience, because soon he will no longer be in that place. Then, the man turns and starts to leave the room as the protagonist looks at her back and wonders if she is dead, while still being very surprised by the fact that she might have a husband. Although, she realizes that any way she looks at herself, their relationship is probably bad. The girl gets a little upset, and starts to think that something was obviously wrong. Then, her maid and butler approach her, and tell her that the girl has just woken up after a recent incident. The maid tells the girl that she must stay in bed, but the protagonist doesn't listen to her subjects and gets out of bed anyway. She takes a few timid steps and reaches the mirror, where she has a really bad headache. Meanwhile, we learn that unknown memories keep surfacing in the girl's mind. She looks in the mirror and notices that she has silver hair down to her waist, as well as very beautiful and bright eyes. Her name also comes to mind, and we learn that the girl's name is Sherial Lopra. We discovered that she is the first beauty of the empire, and as well as the wife of the noble Duke of Lopira. At the same time, she is also the mother who neglects the protagonist of the fantasy book Azus Raskatas. Then, Sherial holds her head and starts to scream a little. She thinks she is going crazy as she realizes she is trapped in a romance. Her subjects observe the girl, and notice that she is apparently still very ill. The woman tries to calm down, but does not understand how to do this, as she found herself in a very strange situation. The girl doesn't know what to do. After all, the story didn't have many lines about the main character's mother. She starts slapping her face, and wonders if she really is a mother in a book or if it's just another dream. When the girl slapping herself hurts, she realizes that she's feeling everything, and it's probably real. The girl thinks about it, then she realizes that if it's really true, she will have to continue living there. When she finally realizes that this will be the case, the girl is completely scared. She wonders why she didn't end up being a lover or a secondary character, since a role as the main character's mother doesn't suit her. She remembers how crazy and obsessive the original hero is, and we learn that he even killed minor characters. The girl realizes that she can also die for him in this world. She remembers how a girl refused the protagonist, asking him to let go of her hand. In response, the boy says that if she wants to run away, let her run away, because he is generous. But he soon warns her that if she gets attached, she must be ready. Because he will put chains on her so that she will not run away from him again. The protagonist also remembers that this is a story where the characters suffered a lot, a fact that bothers her a lot. At the same time, she realizes that now is not the time to indulge in sentimentality, since the main character will destroy everyone who stands in his way. At the same time, she realizes that bad parents are also often attacked, so she realizes that she too is already in the risk zone. Apparently, she already has a very bad relationship with her husband, and your son will become a woman-obsessed psychopath. She realizes that if she doesn't want to die like in the original novel, she needs to create a good relationship with her family before it's too late. But she also realizes that the problem is that she doesn't know which one she needs to improve her relationship with first. Suddenly, she hears that she has a child outside the window, and is very surprised that she has children in this place. She wonders who it could be. The protagonist looks outside and sees a boy with the same silver hair as hers, dressed in blue clothes. She looks at him, amazed at how cute this boy is. Then, suddenly, the girl realizes that if there is a child in this castle, then most likely, the cute boy she saw outside the window is her son, and future psychopath. Although she has noticed all this, the protagonist cannot take her eyes off her son. She says that it looks like she has never seen this child, so she still looks at the boy in surprise. She wonders why he is so cute, as it was nothing like the brutal image described in the novel. So the girl finally decides who she will have to improve her relationship with first, and says that compared to her scary husband, it would be better to start with a cute boy. But at the same time, the girl realizes that now she already has a completely different problem. She doesn't know how to get closer to her son, nor what to do so. The next morning, a maid runs into the girl's room, reminding her mistress that it was morning and time for her to wake up and have breakfast. The girl runs to the bed, interested in how she feels, while in the girl's hands is a tray of food that she brought for Cheryl. Cheryl tells her maid that he feels quite well, but the maid suggests to her mistress to ignore domestic matters and just recover. In the end, she agrees with her maid, asking her if she knows how many days she had been in bed after the incident. We discover that the maid's name is Daisy, and she responds that her mistress has been in bed for days. But the protagonist emphasizes that even though she has rested for days since then, she still doesn't feel completely recovered. Daisy tells the girl that it was a bad accident, so it was understandable. Everyone thought that something serious had happened to the lady, causing chaos in the mansion, as none of them could have known that there would suddenly be an accident in the carriage. The girl finally realizes what happened, but is worried about something else. It turns out that she is worried that her husband, with whom she has a bad relationship, has come to her room, while she still has no news about her son. Then, she wonders if their relationship is even worse than she could have imagined. After that, the protagonist turns to her maid again, asking if Cardle is busy. With this question, the maid's expression literally changes, and it becomes obvious that she doesn't know what to answer. Seeing her maid's face, the protagonist thinks that the relationship between her and her son is really very bad, but she also knows that she can no longer just sit and wait for the end. The protagonist decides to immediately ask her maid if she knows where her son is, and in response, is told that the maid knows where he is, telling her that her son is in the garden. Then the cheerful maid asks her lady if she will go to the garden to meet her son. But in the meantime, the girl is a little confused by the original novel. It turns out that in the original, Cardle did not identify with any feeling. She thinks about how he shouldn't be like this now because he's a kid, but she knows she still needs to get to him first before that happens, even though she's really nervous about it. She also realizes that they need to meet as soon as possible because she needs to know how deep their relationship was, and also realizes that it will take a long time for her to fully recover. Realizing that her lady has not given her any answer about picking up her son, the maid says that she has already informed her everything correctly, and advises her to rest a little longer. As Daisy tries to leave the protagonist's room, she suddenly asks the maid to wait a little. Then, the protagonist gets out of bed and says she needs to see her son, asking her maid if she will accompany her to the garden. The woman is a little surprised by the request, and asks her lady if she is sure she wants to do this, since she hasn't recovered yet. But the girl says she won't be long and agrees to be under the supervision of her maid. Daisy is very happy about this, and says that in that case, she agrees to accompany Cheryl, while also emphasizing that she will help her lady get ready. After going out to the garden, the protagonist looks around, and realizes that before Cardle found the protagonist, it was a very beautiful garden. It turns out that in the original, he planted vines throughout the garden, so that the protagonist couldn't escape him. But that's not the original story now, so the girl starts looking for her son. Suddenly, the protagonist finds her son, who is eating something and says it is very tasty. The girl looks from behind the bushes and marvels again at how cute her son is. She realizes that apparently it is very tasty, and he really likes sweets. Immediately afterwards, the girl feels a little sad, remembering the events of the original story, wondering why the protagonist had abandoned such a lovely child. The girl looks at her son again and sees that there is cream on his cheeks. In her opinion, it all looked very beautiful. She also thinks that her son will be popular in the future. The girl finds it very amusing the way her son eats sweets, and looking at him happily, she thinks about how she wants to wipe the cream off his face. The boy continues to eat diligently, when suddenly, he hears that there is someone in the bushes and turns around, asking who is there. The girl and the maid hide behind the bushes, and then the protagonist asks Daisy if Cardle caught her spying. The maid says maybe, because she was talking so loud about how nice he is. The boy starts screaming again, saying he heard everything. With her realizing that Cardle has noticed her, the girl comes out from behind the bushes and greets her son, but he doesn't seem as enthusiastic as his mother, and turns away from her, asking why she came. The protagonist says that she saw him in the garden, and then asks if she could join him, since he was having tea. But the boy doesn't answer anything, and thinks about it for a while. After that, he gets up from his seat and starts to leave. The girl is surprised to see this, not knowing how to do the right thing, but at the same time, thinking about how he decided to go somewhere else. She also realizes that she can't just let the boy go. She catches up to him, and kneeling next to him, she holds the boy by the sleeve of his shirt and asks him to wait a bit, not to go anywhere. The woman asks her son if he could give his mother a little time. At first, the boy is a little lost at the question, but then he slaps his mother's hand, shouting loudly that he doesn't need a mother like her. With the boy looking very angry, the girl is confused by her son's behavior. She thinks about what is happening, and wonders what he meant by not needing a mother like her. At that moment, the boy runs from his mother in tears, while the protagonist is on her knees calling him, but he doesn't respond at all, running away from his mother with his eyes closed. Suddenly, he trips over a rock and falls straight to the ground. The protagonist immediately gets up and goes to her son. The boy, lying on the floor in tears, tells the protagonist to go away and stop being kind to him, as he knows it was all a lie. But the protagonist tells her son not to talk like that, and asks him to let her look at his knee, realizing his knee is bleeding. At that moment, she tries to touch his knee, but the boy still reacts to his mother's words. He yells at the protagonist to stay away, emphasizing how he already said he doesn't need her. Then, the boy gets up, and still crying, starts running away from his mother again, followed by a worried butler and a maid. The butler notes that it is not safe for him to run like this, while the protagonist remains in the same place, disappointed that her relationship with her son is so bad. At the same time, she is approached by a servant who is also watching her mistress. That night, Cheryl looks out the window, frustrated. She remembers the moment her son ran away from her and stumbled, worried about her son's health. She thinks he had a pretty bad fall and wonders if he's okay. You can see concern on her face, and we see that she is worried about Cardle apparently hating her more than she expected. The girl realizes that this is a big problem, and notes that tomorrow she will hardly be able to see him in the garden again. She regrets taking away her son's only resting place, and also realizes that Cardle was surprised and confused by the change in her behavior. The girl thought about all of this, trying to think of a way to gradually get closer to him. The girl starts writing something on a piece of paper, and while she is writing something, she asks if her maid is outside. Then the girl immediately hears the answer that she was there. We find out that she wrote a letter to her son. She hands him the maid, asking if she can give the letter to Cardle. The maid is a little surprised and confused by the request. Cheryl tells him that she realizes how strange it might be to only now start forming a relationship with her son, but yet she still really wants to do it. The maid is delighted with her lady's behavior, saying that she can leave it to her, as she will make sure to deliver the letter to the young master. The protagonist is happy with this, and tells the girl that she trusts her. A few days later, Cardle wakes up in his room. Next to him is a huge box, which is obviously a gift for the young boy. The boy opens his eyes and looks at the box, realizing that it is a gift again, and it was obvious that he is a little confused. The boy is also a little irritated, and wonders why his mother is sending him these useless things. After the young knight opens the box that was on the bed, he sees inside a cute teddy bear, some kind of box, and a letter that was stuck in the present. The boy decided to first open the letter and read what it says. But once he starts reading, he gets a little confused. It is clear that the letter was sent to him by his mother. In the letter, the protagonist asks the boy if he is okay. She also mentions how nice the weather was today, so she asked them to prepare his favorite dessert for him. She also tells him that he can rest in peace in the garden since she won't bother him anymore. Plus, she has a PS. And the girl asks the boy if his knee is okay, specifying that he put ointment on it. She tells him to apply this ointment, and his knee will feel much better. Then, the boy remembers his mother's relationship with him before. It turns out that before, his mother told the boy that he was annoying, but now everything was strange, and he can't understand why she was suddenly treating him like this. Suddenly, a butler enters the boy's room. He asks the young knight if he is awake, and the boy is obviously very frightened, telling his butler that his arrival was very unexpected, and scared him very much. The butler thinks about how Cardle throws away all the toys his mother gives him, but at the same time, he keeps all her letters. Then, he apologizes to the young knight, saying he was afraid he would wake up from his knocking. After that, the butler asks the boy if he can help him change his clothes, but the young knight says that he has no need, and that he can handle everything himself. The butler asks what to do with the box next to the gift his mother sent him again. The boy thinks about it for a while, but doesn't respond. After a short wait, the butler says that like previous times, he will carefully take the box outside so that no one sees it. The butler is already preparing to take the box, taking it in his hands. But he went to the butler who was about to take the box away and asked him to wait. The boy immediately grabs the teddy bear that was sent to him and tells his butler to throw away the box and leave. He says in a somewhat aggressive way that the toy will stay in the room for now, and he clearly blushes at this. The butler says he understands, emphasizing that apparently the toy was to his liking. The butler seems very happy about this, while the boy blushes even more as he hugs the teddy bear, saying that it wasn't because his mother gave it to him, but just because she really liked him. The butler is about to leave, saying he will only throw the box the gift was in. The boy runs off with his toy, but also says that before the butler leaves, he has something to ask him. On the other side, in the lady's room, the protagonist seemed very happy that Cardle had sent her a letter in return. She informs her maid Daisy, who is also very happy about it, congratulating her lady on the wonderful news. The protagonist asks if Daisy wants to see what the boy wrote with her. But after the protagonist opens Cardle's letter, her expression immediately changes. The girl is much sadder than before, and we can see that she is very upset. It turns out that the boy wrote in the letter that the girl should no longer send him letters or toys. The girl, upset, says that she already knew, thinking that toys and letters were too much to begin with. Daisy is also a little upset by the letter, and seeing that her lady is sad, she tries to lighten her mood. The protagonist says that she is fine, as she already expected things to happen this way. Despite this bad news, the girl begins to be happy that her son's handwriting is so beautiful. She asks Daisy if it's not surprising that he has such good handwriting when he's so small. Daisy says yes, and admires the boy's quick learning. At the same time, Cheryl says that somehow, she is also very happy because she received her son's first response letter. Daisy happily says that in her opinion, the young knight responded to his mother because he still doesn't understand her very well, as the girl shows interest in him for the first time. Getting a little worried, Daisy says that maybe she shouldn't say that, but she is also very happy, because it was the first time she had seen a smile on the protagonist's face since she arrived here. The girl thinks about it, and she wonders if this is really the first time Daisy has seen her smiling. She realizes that she has probably never smiled since she arrived at the duchy. She also remembers the moment she first woke up in her bed, realizing even though she remembered that moment in more detail, she had no joy on the faces of the people around her. In fact, at that moment they seemed more afraid of what would happen in the future than genuinely concerned about her health. Realizing this seems to make her a little upset at first, but then, she laughs a little in her chair, thinking that as strange as it may seem, she can't remember anything about the place she lived in for so long. The protagonist looks at Daisy, considering asking her maid about this. The maid notices the girl looking at her, and wonders if she wants to say something. At first, Cheryl doesn't respond at all, and realizes that she has no reason to rush, as she must focus on her son first. So, she asks Daisy if he won't hate her more if she tries to get closer to him. The maid admires her lady's behavior again, saying that it certainly won't be like that. She asks if the girl wants to meet the young master in person, and she thinks about Daisy's proposal and asks if she can go out with her. She is afraid that the boy will reject her again and get hurt again, but even so, she dares to take this bold step, and tells her maid that she doesn't even know where her son is now. Then, quite happily, Daisy asks what the girl is talking about, since all the maids in the mansion know that lately the young master has been going to the garden just a little earlier than usual. The girl is surprised by this, and asks Daisy if she heard correctly, and if Cardle is now in the garden. But suddenly, she thinks about how she wrote in a letter that she wouldn't bother him when he was resting there. But Daisy interrupts all her thoughts, and says that he is sure that the young master also wants to find her. She tells the girl to go quickly, saying that she will help her get ready quickly, while the protagonist is very happy that the maid is so supportive. Afterwards, the scene changes to the garden, with Cheryl wondering if that really was a good idea. She is thinking about what she should start talking about when she meets her son. Suddenly, she looks around and notices that the boy is sitting on a chair, just like last time, eating some sweets. The boy also notices his mother, but this time he doesn't seem to try to escape her, and just stares at her. At that moment, she realizes that it was as Daisy said, and so, she walks a little closer to him, looking at him happily. She asks if he got hurt. The young man still seems to resent his mother, and says he was hurt, but not as much as she might think. At the same time, she pays attention to her injured knee, being happy that the boy put medicine in her leg. For her, that was commendable. She also notices that the boy hasn't eaten a single dessert, even though he likes sweets so much. He was also told that he has been in the garden since morning. She doesn't understand why this happened, since the boy had enough time to eat something. She asks her son if he was waiting for her. The young knight blushed a little and thought about his answer, saying that of course he wasn't. The protagonist, obviously a little saddened by the answer, told the boy that she thought he wouldn't come to her favorite place today. But the young knight immediately replies to his mother that he always comes to this place. He finally starts eating the desserts that were placed on the table, and says he has no reason to give up his seat just because someone else has it. She is very happy with his answer, and says if he really thought so, then they both can sit here together. But the boy, a little irritated by his mother's behavior, says he doesn't want that. Cheryl notices that the boy is still wary of her, but notes that he has stopped pushing her away. So she immediately asks if she can stand behind him, watching him eat. The boy shifted his gaze to one of the desserts and looked embarrassed, but he didn't reject his mother's request, and said she could stay there. The protagonist is very happy with the answer, and thanks him for the opportunity, saying that she will try not to interfere with his rest in the garden. She watches him finally touch her desserts, becoming very happy again, as if she loves her son even more now, finding him especially sweet and charming. A week later, on the girl's desk there is a huge number of envelopes, which have not even been opened. She thinks about how Cheryl didn't lead a very active social life, but still had her invited to various events. Soon after, the protagonist starts copying and pasting ready-made refusal responses, while thinking about how there is no need for her to be sociable now, all because she thinks she doesn't have time and is irritated by it all. Apparently she is very busy watching her son in the garden, and after a while, she eventually wrote refusals for almost every invitation that was sent to her. So she tells her maid that she only had one letter left to answer. Daisy says that her lady did a good job, and then she asks if she can ask her lady a question, and at the same time, she says that her question might seem a little rude. But Cheryl agrees, and says of course, she can ask him. Then, Daisy asks if her lady has been getting closer to the young master lately. The girl is surprised by this, and says yes, but emphasizes that it was slow progress. Then the maid also notices that on the girl's desk is her diary. Daisy says this diary looks like a notebook of observations of people she didn't like. But the protagonist is very surprised by this, and says that it was nothing like that, and in fact, she only wrote characteristics that she found pleasant about Cardell. Anyway, Cheryl gives her the letters, warning her that she only responded to the important invitations, and then tells Daisy to send them all, which Daisy soon complies with. After that, the protagonist opens her diary and thinks about what to write in it today. Looking at him again, she talks about how she just wrote down her son's cute features, not understanding what's weird about it. It turns out that she actually wrote down everything that happened between her and Cardle. The diary said how he frowns when she tries to get close to him, and how Cardle ignores her if she talks to him, which the protagonist also finds cute. She also wrote about the first time she saw him in the garden. Furthermore, the protagonist recorded how her son refused all the gifts, but seemed to have liked the bear, believing the butler's words, and even responded to his letter. Daisy sees her lady happily reading the notebook, and thinks that apparently her lady was really being sincere. Daisy suggests to the girl that she show the diary to the young master, despite thinking that he will probably refuse the offer. Cheryl questions Daisy if she should really show it to Cardle, asking if she thinks they can get closer if she does. Daisy is surprised by how excited she seems about her son. She thinks a little about the lady's question, and says that in her opinion, it would be an opportunity for the two of them to talk. At the same time, she keeps looking at her lady, thinking that she has really lost her mind. Then, the protagonist closes her notebook, deciding that this was a great idea. She thanks her maid and says she will be back soon. Now, Cheryl walks to Cardle's room, imagining how the place should be decorated, as she is greeted by all the servants there. The girl, going to her son's room, thinks that he is still a child, so the furniture is probably small. She also thinks that his room has colorful walls, and thinks how cute it would be if he had some toys too. Then, she arrives at the door of her son's room, and standing in front of the door, thinks about what to do, since she is shaking so much that she can't even knock on it. But even though she was shaking, the girl decided to knock on her son's room, with your diary still in your hands. She thinks she needs to calm down a little. After she knocked, Cardle immediately responded from behind the door. The young master asked who was knocking on her door, and at that moment, Cheryl was so scared that she even jumped a little away from the door, thinking that the boy answered faster than she thought. Seeing that no one responded, the young knight, from behind the door, hesitates to go there and open it. But he goes there saying he already asked who was knocking, when he suddenly finds the girl bending down to his height, drawing his attention to the chocolate bar with a teddy bear. But the young master immediately slams the door in the girl's face. She is a little scared by this behavior, but says she is used to it. She asks her son to wait a little as she came to show him something. After hearing this, the boy decides to open the door a little again. Only half of his body is visible from behind the door, and he looks at his mother with some tiredness. But the girl is apparently happy that her son at least opened the door for her. Cardle then lets his mother into the room, but mentions that he only opened the door for the chocolate she brought, as he blushes a little and immediately snatches the chocolate bar from her hands. The protagonist looks around her son's room, thinking about how it was quite different from what she imagined when she went to it, as it doesn't have small furniture or painted walls like she thought. She soon realizes that Cardle did not throw away the bear she gave him, but she keeps it carefully. But the young man becomes very angry and embarrassed, saying that he just didn't want to throw it away, so he decided to keep it. Right after these words, he starts hiding the toy behind one of the pillows. After he finishes this, he demands that his mother tell him what she wanted to show him. She is a little surprised that he got straight to the point so quickly, but Cheryl is not confused, and handing him the diary in which she wrote down everything that happened between them, she said that in that diary she wrote everything she thought about. After that, she asks the boy if he wants to read. The boy pretends not to be interested, but still takes a look at what is there. The boy takes the notebook from his mother's hands and begins to carefully read everything he sees, but he soon becomes incredibly surprised and embarrassed. Afterwards, he becomes a little embarrassed, apparently due to the emotion he had not yet experienced at that moment. Suddenly a large flame appears around him, and the diary he was holding in his hands is burned. At that moment, the boy looks directly at his mother, noticing that when she got scared, the woman called him Cardizzle. The girl is incredibly scared by what she sees, and realizes that that ability belonged to the Duke of Lopra in the original book. She also remembers that this ability could only be used by the head of the family and his heir. Suddenly her fear turns into great joy. She realizes that Cardell could now use her powers and is happy about it, although she is still a little upset that her precious notebook was burned. The boy then grabs his mother by her dress. We can see that the boy is a little dejected, but the protagonist is happy, and tells herself that since he doesn't like that, she won't write them anymore. Suddenly, after that, and still holding his mother by her dress, the boy asks why she called him Cardizel. The girl is a little surprised by this question from her son, but in the same second, she realizes that apparently he doesn't like what she called him. Somewhat embarrassed, the boy mentions that she used to call him Cardell. With that, the girl approaches her son's level again, and holding his hands, she asks if she can call him Cardell. To this question, the boy does not answer anything, but the girl continues to look closely at him and admire him. She then thinks about how such a pure child grew up to hurt others. She doesn't want to see him go to prison and hurt the story's protagonist, while at the same time, she thinks that like a child he absorbs everything he sees. Then, she wonders if his future will change if she gives him enough love and teaches him how to love. The protagonist also realizes the responsibility for his growth and character formation that lies on her, as she needs to make him a good boy, as she became his mother. Then the girl turns to her son and asks if he can give her at least 10 minutes a day. As she gently touches her face and calls him not Cardizel, but Cardell. The young man, obviously a little lost at the question and changing his expression, asks his mother why she needs this. In response, the protagonist apologizes to the boy for having realized everything so late, saying that she wants to teach him many things. She realizes how she has to teach Cardell to care for someone and love someone, since no one taught that child that. Looking at the boy, she sees that he is thinking a little about her request. So, the completely red boy agrees to his mother's proposal, and tells her that he will dedicate some time to her, but he soon turns around and emphasizes that it will be 10 minutes a day. After that, the girl seems very happy that the boy finally made contact with her. She thanks her son for the honor and emphasizes that she will not disappoint him. Later, the two main characters are already in the garden. She looks at her son and thinks about what a very charming child he is, yet not understanding how he could become someone who harms others in the future and will end up going to prison. She realizes that according to the plot of the original novel, no one paid attention to him, and he didn't know how to give or receive affection properly. With the girl enjoying the way the boy once again eats his favorite desserts, she thinks at the same time that she will definitely raise him well, lest he become as he was predestined in the original book, and exuding determination in the matter. At this moment, the boy also notices that his mother seems happy and asks her what she is thinking. The girl, looking at her son with love, does not get lost and tells him that at that moment she was thinking about the best way to begin his education. Ziriel then looks up at the sky and sees white doves flying above them. She asks her son what he would do if he had a precious bird. The boy is a little surprised by the bird's question, and says that he will have to make a beautiful cage. The girl is pleased with this response from her son, noting that he decided to make the bird feel comfortable. And the girl says this is a great start. The boy agrees, and says that it is so because as the bird is precious, it must be locked up tightly so that it cannot fly away. At this point, it is already obvious that his thoughts went in the wrong direction. It was as if the protagonist was scared by the answer, and her beautiful pink world was being destroyed before her eyes. She is scared by his words, but Cardell still calmly says that if you put the bird in a cage, you can just look at it and admire it, and if the bird lives without a cage, it can just fly away. The protagonist realizes that her words already show and prove that problems exist. She knows that no matter how she perceives her words, it seems that he is already thinking selfishly and against everyone. The boy realizes that his mother is thinking about his words, and asks why she doesn't say anything more. But the girl pretends that she is not bothered, and while she smiles a little, she says that she is surprised that her thoughts are deeper than she thought. Meanwhile, she asks her son if he would like to read a book with her next time. The boy agrees with this. At the same time, the girl wonders since when he became like this. She doesn't understand at what point everything went wrong, imagining that maybe the boy was like this from the beginning. The action moves to the protagonist's office, where she appears to be completely shaken and thinks the situation is much worse than she thought. She doesn't understand how best to train Cardell. Just then, she is called by Daisy, but it seems as if she doesn't even pay attention to her maid. Daisy notices that the protagonist isn't paying attention to her, and decides to shout to make the girl notice her. Cheryl finally comes out of her thoughts and tells her maid that she scared her. Daisy is upset that she scared her lady, but he justifies himself, saying that he called for her several times, but got no response. Furthermore, Daisy asks what the protagonist is thinking, because from her expression she seems worried. At that moment she remembered how, when she was in her son's room, he used her powers. But in order not to reveal all this to the maids, she says that some warm memories just came to her suddenly. Daisy is surprised by her lady's words and asks the protagonist if she was having these thoughts because of the master's imminent return to the palace. But it turns out that the protagonist didn't even know that, and she imagines that maybe the knight is the handsome man she met the first day she came here, and she even has an image in her head of what the knight looks like now. She realizes that if this man is her husband, then, consequently, he is also Cardel's father. She realizes that raising children is their responsibility, so she wonders if she should try to get closer to the Duke by talking about it. Daisy doesn't get a response from her lady, and decides to ask if she's okay. She thinks that maybe her lady still feels uncomfortable when the Duke is here, but the girl doesn't mind that because she thinks of getting closer to her father for the sake of her sweet son. She asks Daisy when the Duke will return to the palace. The maid tells her lady that if she is not mistaken, the Duke will arrive in 2 days. Daisy decides to ask a question again that she thinks is impolite. And she asks the protagonist if she will go somewhere else when the Lord returns to the castle. Cheryl is obviously surprised by this question. After all, she had plans to get closer to the Duke for the sake of a common cause. Looking at her surprised maid, she wonders why Daisy asked the question, but Daisy decides to emphasize that recently the protagonist has been spending a lot of time with the young master. Daisy also reports that all the servants are grateful to the girl for the fact that the mansion came back to life after her changes. Then, the insistent maid says that's why she has a certain request. The protagonist is also surprised that the girl has a request, and notices that Daisy has suddenly shown confidence. So, the maid decides to make her request public, and bowing to her mistress, she says that she knows that it has nothing to do with the topic of her conversation, but asks the mistress to be a little cheerful when the master returns to the mansion. The protagonist is shocked by that. She starts accusing Shriel of behaving completely badly, and she wonders how bad the girl's relationship is with her own husband. Also at this moment, the protagonist pats her face with the palms of her hands. Daisy, seeing this, thinks that she was very wrong for saying that, and thinks that it is something perhaps quite unexpected for Cheryl. She explains herself, saying that she had been feeling so happy lately that she must have gone crazy, while telling the protagonist that she will accept any punishment for her insolence and asking for her forgiveness. The protagonist is obviously not at all aggressive towards her maid, and even seems happy to have such a faithful assistant in family matters. She looks directly at Daisy and says that she doesn't understand what punishment is in question, and also says that of course, she will be happy to see the Duke. Daisy was already accepting her punishment, when she realized that her mistress's response was not negative in any way, being surprised by this. At the same time, the protagonist thinks that parental hostility is destructive to a child's emotions. At that moment, the lady, completely determined, tells the maid to inform everyone immediately that she will give a solemn reception to the Duke upon his return home. She also thinks about how her sweet little baby is already on the verge of becoming a useless person with bloody hands, and she can't let that happen. Daisy admires her mistress, and the maid's eyes seem to begin to shine. She immediately runs out of the room, shouting in agreement that she's going to get everything ready and tell everyone the news. Finally, the protagonist is alone in the room. She says that thanks to the preparations for the meeting with the Duke, everyone will be very busy at the mansion, and notes that she needs to finish the documents as quickly as possible. Just as the protagonist is about to write, she suddenly remembers that she doesn't even know her husband's name. This is very alarming, as it would be completely strange. 2 days later, the Duke is returning home with his knights. A commander-in-chief of the knights notices that something is clearly wrong with the Duke, and asks if the man is okay. In response, the Duke mumbles something and tells his subject that he doesn't really want to go home. At that moment, another knight who heard the conversation enters the dialogue, asking if the reason for the reluctance to return was the lady. Seeing that no one answers the boy's question, he immediately finds himself intimidated, and everyone's eyes turn to him for such an unusual question. The main commander of the knights asks the boy if he wants to freeze to death. Obviously, this is a reference to the cold that hits him, but the Duke raises his hand and asks his subjects to forget about it, because they will be arriving soon, so there's not much point in just talking about these things. Then the Duke gets on his horse and thinks angrily about how he was told to not before entering, imagining that perhaps he should break down the door, although he doubts she is still in the mansion. After approaching the house, the Duke is surprised to see that all the servants have come out to greet him, bowing. The Duke gets off his horse and looks wearily at his subjects. He doesn't say anything, but he wonders why all these people are out there. Then, the Duke's face freezes in surprise, as a little further on he sees his wife dressed in beautiful clothes, who exceeded all his expectations, coming to meet him. The Duke continues to look at his wife for a long time, as he still cannot believe that the girl also came out to meet him. But the protagonist, who noticed the Duke's gaze, also greets him along with all the servants, informing him that she was waiting for him. The Duke is so surprised by what he sees that he can't believe his eyes. He is talking to the commander-in-chief of his knights, whose name is Amo. The Duke tells his subject that he is hallucinating, then asks him to call a doctor as soon as they enter the mansion. But the subject is also surprised, and decides to tell him that it is not a hallucination. The Duke thinks about what is happening, still refusing to believe it all.